Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first UK Deaf Leadership Summit webinar. This webinar today is sponsored by Deaf Connect. Really, it's such a unique webinar. And the reason for this is because we have focus on very specific deaf issues on deaf leadership and management. It's a fantastic opportunity. It's there to inspire people and empower deaf people into leadership and management roles. And that's not only here in the UK, but that's all over. We can engage in ideas and also share experiences. Of course, this develops opportunities. So here, together as a collective, the webinars, we have a few in the series, and some are in sign language, and some are spoken, but we also have subtitles here for those. It's also recorded so that it can be published. So watch out for the videos.
Thank you so much, Craig. What a wonderful welcome, and I really appreciate your introduction for me this morning. It is an absolute pleasure for me to be here, to be part of this panel and be involved in this presentation today. To introduce myself, my name is Paul. I work for Zebra Access. And today I've been asked to talk about how deaf leaders can build and develop community engagement within the deaf community. Next slide, please. So I will just reintroduce myself. I was born in East Africa, in Tanzania, and I moved to the UK when I was very young. I grew up here. But I'm very proud of my identity, firstly as a Black person. I believe that I have Black culture from my family, and that's part of who I am. And then my secondary identity is linked to my deafness. I am part of the deaf community. I enjoy being part of a signing BSL community, and I am part of I have deaf culture as part of me as well. So my background is in performing arts, and all the way through secondary school, I was a big fan of the theatre, and I was very involved in the performing arts side of things. And it might seem a little bit of a strange change into then politics, but I will explain that later on. I lived in London. I grew up in London, and although I am now based in Wolverhampton, that is basically due to work. And it's because I have been doing quite a lot of work remotely, and then eventually I decided I would move to Zebra Access so that I'm based in Wolverhampton. Next slide, please. I'm sure that we all recognise this picture of Barack Obama, and he has an intrinsic link to my story. I feel that I have been hugely inspired by him. I remember 2008, the time of the presidential election, and I want to explain how this links to my story. I remember seeing Obama and being surprised and shocked that there was potential for a Black president. I didn't believe that the Black presidential candidate would win. I watched the debates between Obama and Hillary Clinton. You know, it's the same as our parliamentary debates or our leader debates between, say, the Conservatives and the Labour Party. And at that time, I found myself becoming more and more interested in politics. I was very inspired by the way that Obama had been an activist, the way he had campaigned, and the way that he was persuading people to vote for him and for his policies. I will never forget that day, the 4th of November, 2008. I was in college and everyone else had gone to bed, and I just remember sitting mesmerized by what was happening on the television, watching it as the results came in, and I couldn't believe that the first Black person, Obama, had become president. And at that point I decided that I would give up my performing arts dreams, because really what I was interested in was pursuing a link to politics. And this stemmed back to my childhood, it stemmed back to my father. And I would have watched the debates in the House of Commons, and my father was saying, "You're really interested in this, why don't you look at this?" And I was saying I couldn't. And then suddenly I did think I could. Obama's story really inspired me. And so I went to Preston, and then I did my M.Sc at Loughborough University. And that was in diplomacy and foreign policy. And I feel like Obama's journey through the community to the White House was very similar to the journey that I've been on, and the story that I have of being a part of the community and a community activist. I really recommend his book, Dreams from My Father, which is a biography. So I heartily recommend that to you if you have time to read it. Next slide, please. So that's enough about Obama. My personal experience really started with Newham Deaf Forum. This is in East London, and at that time I really felt that it was important to be involved in this forum. I wanted to involve access, improve access, improve services to hospitals, medical care. As you know, there are a lot of language barriers that deaf people encounter on a daily basis in terms of education, in terms of healthcare, even just in terms of accessing the council. Decisions concerning politics or mayoral decisions. In order to make those work for us, we need to influence change. And the way that that's going to happen is for residents to become involved, because hearing residents can become involved in these decisions, but in order for deaf residents to become involved, they need access in sign language. We don't need to be patronised. We don't want people feeling sorry for us. We just need the barriers that are in our way to be broken down. And that is what Newham Deaf Forum was set up to do. It was to build the bridge between the deaf and the hearing community. And the important thing was to create that link and to reduce those cultural barriers. Next slide, please. So, what is community development? What does that actually mean? Community development encourages collective action, the identification of problems and then the resolutions of those. It encourages residents to be involved and have an input in things that affect their lives. It looks for encouraging equality and better quality services, because a happy life, we know, is a healthier one, and the environment that we live in is crucial for this. So it's trying to remove barriers to situations. For example, the HS2 train, the building of this line, we don't know how that will affect the community until you ask the residents, and if you ask them if they are happy for this to be built. Do they want it? Is this something that they think would benefit their lives? You have to engage them in these debates, because the government have made these decisions, but actually it affects the people on the ground. So that's an example of what a community officer might do. They might go in and ask these questions, and this is what my role is linked to. And I will explain a little bit more about this later on. So, we know that the deaf community are a minority group. And a lot of deaf people face many barriers on a daily basis. And the struggle is really linked to a lack of provision of information in sign language. There is plenty of information provided in English, but if this is not your first language and you struggle to read it, it will be very difficult for you to understand it. And this creates barriers. There's a lack of access, there's ableism, there's ignorance of what we need. And there's a feeling that it develops within the community that our views aren't valued, that any issues we raise are ignored. And the aim is for any deaf people, deaf, blind, hard of hearing, to be able to access services more appropriately. They can access them in sign language, because British Sign Language is something that is provided as a matter of course to enable that inclusion into society. Class, gender, race, disability, any of these things, age, they should not be a barrier to access. They should not prevent people being able to be part of the collective community. Sometimes within the community, there are even communication barriers between the deaf people, because there will be communication differences between people who are profoundly deaf from birth and use sign language, or people who maybe have lost their hearing. So it's important that community officers understand preferred communication styles, whether this could be an oral method, SSE, full British Sign Language, and that they work as part of this group to make sure that they use the best form of communication to enable access and improve access for the community. For example, the campaign at Gallaudet University in America, I can't remember the official date, I think it might have been around 1992. That was an example of a collective movement and a campaign by many deaf people who believed that the university should have a deaf president, because a deaf president would understand deaf people, they would understand deaf identity, deaf culture, they would want to protect that community and work with them and show their identity. That's why it's crucial that strong leaders challenge, strong deaf leaders challenge historic behaviours, because they can use that to help the community to organise, to come together and to get the message across. If there is incorrect understanding, if there are misunderstandings, things won't work, things will break down. So it is crucial that there are those understandings between the deaf and hearing community, that there is that bridge and they are able to work together. And it is strong deaf leaders that will be able to do that, that will be able to hand those things on to the next generation. We haven't got things perfect yet, and I'm not saying it will be easy. We have two cultures, deaf and hearing, and it's very hard to work together. It's hard to build those bridges, but it's something we need to do. So, as you can see from the word map by the side, we've got politics in there, and politics is a big issue. Deaf leaders have experience of what they are trying to campaign for. They have the confidence, and they need to have that feeling of empowerment that they can go forward and raise those issues that are important for their community, that they have the ability to solve them, that they can challenge and they can make a difference, because they have the opportunity to show people how things could be. Deaf leaders have the potential to be involved in social change. They can influence policymakers, they can change from the ground upwards, and they can think about how the legislation that's brought in will affect them. It's crucial at the moment that this development involves the BSL, the British Sign Language Act, because that will increase that feeling of equality. And the campaign's currently going through Parliament with the Conservatives, the Labour Party, the Lib Dems. Really, we need to be able to influence those from the ground upwards. The deaf community need to be able to bring their issues and show them to those parties, show them in those House of Commons debates, and say that we need a BSL Act. I know it's been recognised in law. British Sign Language was recognised in 2003. But we still haven't quite got there. We need a little bit more. And that is why the BSL Act is important, and it's crucial that this is provided by deaf leadership and deaf leaders motivating the collective and encouraging the collective along to work together. There's strength in numbers, so it's important that all of these leaders and community organisations work together. We have a louder voice, we have a powerful voice if we work together, and it is the leadership that is involved in this that will help that voice to be heard. So my role with Zebra Access is as a community development officer. And I cover 4 areas near Wolverhampton. So Walsall, Wolverhampton itself, Dudley, and Sandwell. It's my patch, if you like. It's known as the Black Country. It's the West Midlands. And my focus is how to improve access for the people living in this area. How to improve access, how to improve communication, how to build bridges between local hearing organisations and the deaf people who are living in these 4 areas. I want to ensure equality of service between hearing and deaf communities. And the way that this will happen is by making sure that communication is good. Within my communities that I work with, there are a variety of communication methods, even within the deaf community themselves. And so my role is to make sure that I am building those strong links and those strong networks to increase awareness and provide training for organisations so that they are aware of the importance of making sure that information is accessible for deaf people. A lot of hearing people are very worried when they first meet a deaf person because they've never met one before. So with a little bit of a soft touch and some gentle training and giving them the opportunity to see that deaf people can work with them, it means that I have that ability to influence things to be different. So that's what my role involves, and that's what I see the role of a community development officer to be. I've just created a list here of local organisations, and as you can see, there are some that are specifically deaf organisations: Zebra Access, RAD, Sign Health, Manchester Centre for the Deaf, Action Deafness, BDA. And it's very important that we work with those organisations, but it is equally important that we bridge the gap and work with the hearing organisations. Now, the difficulty is that they are 2 very different cultures, they've got 2 very different philosophies, and so sometimes that networking and that working together is not going to be easy. There will be challenges, but the importance is that there is deaf representation and that people are being shown how deaf people can work together with the hearing community. I know that Boris Johnson has coined the phrase to build back better after the COVID crisis. And in order to do that, for us to help build back better, we need to work with the hearing community. We need to change perspectives. We need to look at ourselves and think about how we can help to improve access to services, to improve equality and improve quality of life for the people that we work with. So, how do we achieve this community engagement which I've been talking about? Deaf and hearing organisations, deaf and hearing services need to work together, but we need to acknowledge and accept that we have different points of view. We might be aiming for the same thing, but we'll have different ways of getting there. There needs to be cultural awareness so that the hearing organisations know about deaf culture and they know how to enable access to these services. If we don't tell them, how will they know? I think deaf people really need to forget our differences. We need to remind organisations that sometimes booking of interpreters is necessary, and that it's not okay to just forget you've got a deaf client. An interpreter is a necessary provision to enable access to that service. So we need to make sure that deaf and hearing people are able to access services at the same time and in the same way. So we might have to repeat our instruction and our reminder regularly, but it is important to show and to teach the hearing services that this is what we have to do. And it's not easy and it's not straightforward, but we need to make sure that we are building those relationships up with hearing organisations and services. And if we can encourage them to do these things, we can aim for a common goal. So I've called this slide Teamwork, Reputation and Core Values. And these are crucial. We have so many skills between us in so many different areas. And we need to work together to give strong leadership. And if we use these skills collectively, we will have that strong leadership and we can achieve so much more. I believe that valuing honesty and openness and collaboration is crucial. I would much rather that issues were raised and dealt with. And then we have that opportunity to resolve problems. There is the saying of there's an elephant in the room, and we don't ever want to be in a situation where we're brushing things under the carpet, and things become worse if you try and just sort of brush them to one side. So if we raise the issues, we deal with them and we move on. So I would say that our core values should be that we value honesty, clear communication, respect for each other, building networks and valuing the ideas of other people and their perspectives. Because part of being a leader is part of being part of a team. And if we want our reputation and our name to go before us, then we need to show these values. Okay. I know that Black Lives Matter at the moment is not the most comfortable of conversations. But I have to bring this up so that I'm not doing what I mentioned before about brushing something aside. I'm sure that we can all remember May last year and the tragic murder of George Floyd by an American policeman. And this took over. The media picked up on the fact that he had had his neck knelt on by the policeman, and it went right around the world. And as a Black person myself, I found it. I've never seen such an outpouring like this before. I know that Black Lives Matter is actually a historic campaign, but it had never garnered so much attention as it did last May. And it really seems to have taken off since then. There have been campaigns, there have been challenges. Everything to try and increase awareness of the fact that Black people's lives matter. And what has happened is there are many leaders who have had to do a lot of introspection and raise their hands and say, I have made mistakes. Say that I have done this wrong. And realise that they need to take action to solve it. In the past, it has been that elephant in the room. It's a perfect example. Something that people have been worried to raise, something people have been worried to talk about. And that's a failing on the part of any leader who has refused to do that. But now that we know, we can solve that issue and we can move on. And to be honest, it happened historically. This issue shouldn't be still an issue now. We should be building foundations together to build a better future that protects minority cultures, protects Black, Asian, anyone, and that encourages more understanding of the situation they are in. Creating safe spaces is vital. So what do I mean by leadership? Obviously, a leader has to have a vision. They take responsibility. They will be mentoring, supporting, guiding people towards their goals. They need to have clear communication strategies. Teamwork is vital, and their ethics are important. But really, if we think about vision, and we see where it lies on this picture here, you can see it's very important that a leader has a clear vision for the team. There is a difference between a manager and a leader. A manager tells you what you should do. A leader takes everyone along together. A leader encourages participation. And the leader has that vision and pulls the rest of the team along with them, because they think that that vision for the future will be better if everyone goes together. That is why teamwork is so important, and collaboration is vital, because there's strength in numbers, and a strong leader will encourage that teamwork. Next slide, please. So each team needs different qualities. Every individual has different qualities that they bring to a team. They might be very good at supporting people. They might be very empathetic. They could have huge amounts of commitment and passion and enthusiasm. Maybe they're very practical and they're good at getting things done. Maybe they are your ideas person. Or maybe they're very good at reflecting and thinking about what could be done or how things could be created. Maybe they're excellent problem solvers. That's what I mean by qualities. What qualities do the people in your team have? There is a personality test that you can take to identify these qualities within yourself. And you might think, well, what is a personality test? But what it means is it is an opportunity for you to answer a series of questions online that really encourage you to look at yourself. You have to answer honestly. So the question could be, are you very good with details? Are you a detail person, or are you a visionary? There are many questions that you answer, but I really recommend it to you to have a look. It's available online, but it will really help you to identify your strengths. And it's a bit like a metaphor for a mirror. The report will show you your strengths. They will show you what you are good at. They will allow you to do that, looking inside of yourself and examining what strengths you have. For example, you could see that you might be surprised by what your strengths and weaknesses are. You might never have thought of these things before. And we are sometimes very good at identifying our strengths, but by identifying your weaknesses, you get that opportunity to address them. Maybe you would come out as you're not visionary enough. You could improve that. You can work on these things. So you have your strengths already there that you can hold on to, and then you have your weaker areas that you can identify and you can improve. I'm the same. I have weaknesses that I need to work on. And so I'm working on these so that I can show my strengths and improve my weaknesses. I know that I'm quite confident, but I also know that I have weaknesses that I need to address. And it's very important that you address these, but without the personality test, I wouldn't have known about them. And you might feel the same. Without doing something to identify these weaknesses, you won't know. So you might think, oh, well, I would like to know a bit more. Well, the way to do it is through these direct questions. And I'm very happy to talk this over with you more, to email, to explain things, if that would help. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Equality, diversion and inclusion policies. They are big words at the moment. And equality is a core value for community development. Discrimination is no longer acceptable, and any measures to eliminate discrimination need to be put in place. It's important that we are able to work together. We know that racism is no longer acceptable, but we don't want that kind of tokenism. So what we mean is we don't want to see, you know, how you might see, for example, in an organisation where all the members of staff are white and then one black person is employed. That is tokenism. That is not diversity. That isn't inclusion. But inclusion and diversity and equality would be a balance of races and ethnicities. Have you heard about, you might see a situation where you have a white deaf person and a black deaf person, and they are treated differently because of the colour of their skin. So one gets a lot of praise and the other one doesn't. That needs to stop. That needs to be something that is removed. That's tokenism as well. But deaf and hearing organisations are the same. Racism and discrimination will not be tolerated, and they need to be raised as issues. And we have a responsibility as leaders to be aware and understand that these issues are still there, and we need to be part of the change and part of that bridge to equality. Our name and our reputation rely on it, and we need to make sure that we are moving forwards. If we need to learn about someone's culture, we need to ask the questions first. We cannot discriminate. We need to allow space, a safe space and time to understand things. And it's important to develop those relationships with colleagues and to challenge racism. It's not easy. My experience, it isn't, but it's something that we have to think about in the future and going forwards. If we want to be equal and we want to provide equality, we want to make sure that Black people have equality. This happened. Martin Luther King campaigned for this years ago, to raise the standard of Black people's living to white people's and have that equality. But we still have places to move to, and we need to move forward, and we have a responsibility to do this. The Equalities Act of 2013 merged several previous acts. So the DDA, I can't remember the exact dates of these things, but the Equality Act kind of took over from the DDA. But it's meant to protect 7 characteristics, including disability and deafness. But actually, it has created problems. It's not strong enough to protect individual issues. Deaf people often need to use BSL as their preferred language, but there is no provision for this within the Equality Act. There's no protection for this within the Equality Act. So in order to provide better access to interpreters, to language, to British Sign Language in the future, we need to make sure that it is a protected characteristic. There have been lots of challenges through access to work and the Equalities Act, but because they've been hearing people making the challenges, there has been limited success. Quite often people will be prepared to pay out to avoid having to go to court, which means that there is no proof and there is no precedent being set. If there was proof and if there was a precedent, that would be a powerful force for change. There have been challenges in America where people have successfully sued against their Disability Discrimination Act, but we don't have the same here. So we don't have that equality, and we need to campaign for this moving forwards. Now, you might be feeling like you're at the bottom of these steps at the moment, that you can't, that you won't. Oh, I don't know, how am I going to do this? I'm here to tell you today that you can. You can achieve anything. You can break down those barriers. You can come on board, we can be on the same boat, we can lead the same ship together, and we can make the situation better for our collective communities. We can make sure that there are no barriers and no limits. So I encourage you to join with me and feel this can-do attitude. So we need you. Because the deaf people today, you're the next generation. And as better leaders, we will be able to make a difference.
Wonderful. So first of all, wow, where do I even begin? That was an incredible, powerful speech from Paul. Really appreciate it. Fantastic, tremendous, thought-provoking. It really was top notch. You really are a true visionary, Paul, and so positive. You show so many people, and you're such a role model to deaf people as a leader yourself. I have so many questions for you, Paul. I hope you're ready. Wonderful.
Don't be shy, please ask.
So the first question that came up, so your presentation was amazing. Who do you actually look up to as your mentor? So through your journey, who was it who inspired you most? Who is it that touches your heart? Over to you, Paul.
Brilliant. Okay, fine. So when I was younger, there was a fantastic deaf woman. She was very inspiring. Her name was Barbara. And at that time, she was passionate and she was very inspirational. And she would visit my family home and she would take me out for activities. And I would really look up to her because she was Black as well. So we shared a culture and we shared a history. And she was a real inspiration. So then thinking about through my, during my degree, there was another inspirational person that I looked up to whilst I was studying, because I really admired their theories and their policies. And it really made me think. I had to challenge myself. Their thinking challenged my thinking. It encouraged me to face issues head on, to develop that slightly thicker skin, to realise that these issues that I was experiencing weren't just mine, they were community issues. And so that was inspirational. And it was important to have that role model because there aren't that many who can encourage you and inspire you and influence you in that way, but encourage you in a proactive way to actually take action. And I think it's so important for deaf people to have those role models, to have those experiences they can look up to, because that gives us strength. It helps us to learn. It helps us to keep learning, to keep observing, and it's so important to have those connections with these inspirational people who've gone before us.
Oh, that's beautiful. Right then, there's more things and more questions here linked to role models. So you're a powerful force of change. That was a beautiful impacting statement there. You have passion. You want to achieve something and you go for it. You head straight into it. Whether it's an organisation or charities, they're lucky to have you. Obviously, you have faced so many challenges in your journey, Paul. One question that I do have for you: how do you face challenges? And also within different groups and different perspectives that there are. So as a leader yourself, how do you make those really difficult decisions? Have you taken many risks? Was it the right decision? Or was there a decision that you made that you regret and wish that you never? And what would you do next?
Wow, gosh, that's a hard question.
Yeah, sorry, that's over from the audience. That's the audience.
Yeah, challenging question. I think if I think about two scenarios, one was a challenge within the hearing community that I took in with me, and that was something that I had to deal with, and I was thinking, how am I going to do it? And really, I just had to grit my teeth and just swallow it down. It was a challenge. And it was one of those ones where I had to think, right, I need to show the hearing community, the hearing people I'm dealing with, my identity and the power that I have as a deaf person. And I need to explain to them that the way they view things is incorrect and their ignorance needs to be challenged. And when I did this, they said, oh, we didn't realise. And actually, I managed to build some relationships with them. And it's things that they'd never thought about. And then I didn't realise that they hadn't ever thought about it. And so then I was able to give them advice and suggest to them how they could move forwards with this. And it was a really, really difficult moment. But I had to make that decision that, yes, I was going to do this. And then there was the application for my M.Sc funding, because I was concerned beforehand that I wouldn't be able to do it, that I would be limited. And then when I got the grant to study, I was just thrilled. I was in my comfort zone before, and the idea of stepping outside of my comfort zone to do further studying was a massive challenge. But you have those all through your life. Deaf people encounter more challenges on a daily basis than hearing people do. And the skills and the tools that we develop and the power we develop to combat these challenges is exceptional. And it's the same. Asian people, white people, we all have challenges, but we can get encouragement from all of these people and support from them to face these challenges head on all the way through our lives. And then, did you have another question? Was there another part of the question in that question?
Yes, it was linked with, So you faced many challenges. Have you made a decision?
Right, yeah, okay.
So is there a decision that you made that you think that you wished you hadn't made?
Brilliant, thank you. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. I suppose one of them is that I had grown up in London. I've been in the same area for all of my life, and I'm starting to just feel a little bit in need of a new challenge, maybe a challenge in a new area. So I applied for a job in January and left my job in London. And it was a huge decision. It was a huge risk to apply for this new sort of, I was applying for jobs 9 to 5. That became my job to do. And then I saw this advert for a job in Wolverhampton. And I thought, oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about Wolverhampton. That's a massive, massive decision. That's a huge risk. And it was a real sort of nail-biting moment. But I thought, right, well, I will apply. And then I got offered the job and I was totally shocked. I have to say, I had to run to the toilet. I felt so overwhelmed by it all. But I was seeking advice from people and asking them what I thought. And they were saying, yeah, just do it, you know. And I made this decision, this really brave decision, again, to step outside of my comfort zone. You know, London's not the only option in the UK. There's lots of places, and Wolverhampton was this place that I could go to. But I had to move to be in a different place, to be based in a new job, to work with a new lot of people, a new hearing community. And so that decision was a huge one. But so far it's going well.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Paul, for your answers, for your response. Other questions that we've collated, we've kind of condensed into 2 questions for you. The first question, you said about leadership tools. It's important for deaf people to achieve leadership based on the leadership tools that you spoke of. It's interesting. You mentioned and spoke about for deaf people to become leaders of their own. We need the power of change, and you're right. So of course, you have other deaf leaders around, and they've been successful in their leadership within mainstream organisations as well. So really, thinking about your vision for both encouragement and encouraging deaf people into leadership roles, into people in change, and then changing organisations, say like health education, politics, employment. So these are two different routes that you can enforce change. So could you tell us your idea? How would you encourage people in order to get into leadership?
That's a very interesting question. Well, can I just say to start with that deaf leadership is not easy. There's a lot of encouragement that is needed. Lots of encouragement to get into the boat, if you like. Maybe a little bit of soft touch, a little bit of training. I mean, the sort of aggressive, come on, you need to do this approach doesn't really work. So it's a case of gradually building people's confidence, gradually instilling in them that belief that they can do it, that they can be proactive and they can get involved, and that they possess the skills necessary to lead. There are some deaf people who are very skilled communicators within their own community, but within the mainstream hearing community, that is harder. And so to be identified as a deaf leader within a world where most leaders are hearing, you have to be able to stand up for yourself. You have to have a thick skin. You have to think about how you will work with the rubbish that hearing people throw at you. You need a secure identity in yourself, because you'll be working with people who don't understand deaf identity or deaf culture. And it is that case of having to prove that you are able to do the job, that you have the necessary skills. It's engendering that trust within hearing people that you are able to do the job and that you're able to do it at the same level as them. And it's hard work. It is hard work. It's an extra burden and it's a challenge. There are many challenges. It's the same for anyone who has another disability. It is difficult for them to break through those barriers. I think the difficulty for us is that within the deaf community, where we can use sign language, it's very straightforward. But within the hearing community, where people in wheelchairs might find it easy because they can communicate in English, it's very difficult for us because we have a different style of communication, and it takes time and it takes patience. And it takes a case of wearing several hats, of leading in one place and then how you manage leadership in a different context, and building those relationships and having those skills inside you that you can just pull out at the drop of a hat. You need to be able to not only lead deaf people, but to be able to lead hearing and to lead a variety of people with diverse needs.
Exactly.
And it's when you identify the fact that you can do these things, you will then find that hearing people are asking you questions and asking you for your expertise, and you will find that you can answer their questions.
That's spot on. It's just exactly that. It's like visibility leadership. It's so important. You spoke about the connections, and you're right. Visible leadership, that's what we need. And that's what we need to be showing people. You need to be leading the way. And so people look and take stand and actually listen. It's refreshing. And you've got to match those challenges. It really is a fantastic answer, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
So sorry, the first question. How many deaf leaders do you think we have out there in the UK? Do you think there's plenty or not so many? That's the first one.
Okay, if I respond to that one.
And then the second, deaf organisations. Should we be encouraging each other to work together to stop discrimination?
Okay.
And that would be empowering the world to make it more comfortable and a better place for everybody to live together.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So the first one about leaders within the UK. I don't think we have enough deaf leaders in the UK. I definitely think we need more. But also don't forget, we have a lot of white deaf leaders in the UK. There are very few black deaf leaders or Asian deaf leaders or LGBTQ leaders. It is so important that we fill those gaps, because those gaps are there. So it's very important that we have training, that there are courses on leadership for deaf people, that there's the opportunity for those people to develop their confidence, to learn that there are other people out there who are the same as them, that they can have this influence, that their ideas have value and importance. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity that living in Britain has given me, because I know that in Africa, the situation is very, very different. It's so hard to break into leadership, even if you have the skills within the community. And in the UK, sometimes there are people who are like, oh, well, we'll just hand it over to Paul because he's better at leading. I'm not really interested in that. I want to hand on to the next generation. I want to make sure that we are encouraging leaders to rise up throughout the UK. So we have plenty of leaders, so that we're developing our leaders, you know, a bit like a tree. If you water your tree and your plant, you know, you need more people. You need enough people to create this strong leadership body. We can't have people who are saying, oh, I don't know how to lead. We need to train them, and we need to help them to develop so that they know how they will be able to lead in the future. And the second one, I think, was about discrimination and leadership throughout life. And I think that's an interesting question. And I've got quite a lot of thoughts about it. And the impact that Black Lives Matter has had on myself. And I think there are gaps in our leadership. And I think what we need is partnership, and we need networking. And we need deaf organisations to collaborate with all of the different communities, with Black communities, and we really have to go with our heart and our passion to create those networks. We need to see each other as almost like a family, so we understand each other, we build those bridges. And we think about how we are going to achieve that collaboration and that leadership. And we're going to do that through relationships. We need to eradicate the barriers. We need to look inside at ourselves and think about how we can, you know, we can't just think, oh yeah, well, we know best, and so that's fine. We need to get rid of those barriers. We need to know that we're not perfect and that we still have things to learn. And we learn through partnership. And that's something that I hadn't thought about before. And it could be things that people haven't thought about, and they've thought, oh no, well, we're all right on our own. But actually, the best decisions come when there's a collaborative organisation. We have strength in numbers, we have strength in partnership. I know that companies have different philosophies. I know that organisations have a different ethos. But if we work together, the theory is that we have power in our number, in our strength, as our strength. The BSL Act Now campaign is evidence of that. People working together for a common goal. And that is so important, because that means that our voice will be heard. On our own, we seem to be a little bit submissive. We seem to not have our voice heard. But together we have the power to ask those questions, to be involved in part of that team, and to make that change happen.
Wonderful. Paul.
Bring them on.
So leadership, teamwork, these are all words that we need. It includes behaviours and attitudes. You're right in what you say. It's about bringing people together to join forces, a greater collective. And with audiences including, everyone's so on board with you. And now they know what the leadership qualities are. So could you share those with us? Because I think, what are they that are quite specific in terms of the need of the qualities that leadership has?
Okay, leadership qualities. I think teamwork. I think that's vital. I think it needs to be a balance of weaknesses and strengths. And maybe this is where the personality test that I mentioned could be useful. Because that will identify each team member's individual skills. I don't know, I can't look inside their brains and say what skills they have, but they will be able to identify their own skills, their own strengths. And then we can put those qualities together and become a team. And it gives the opportunity to improve on weaknesses. If weaknesses are identified, if one person has a weak area that is a strength for someone else, they can support each other to develop them. There can be this collaborative sharing of skills and sharing of experience. And that can happen if we understand what skills we have. Because if we don't know what skills we have, we can't improve them. We can't correct our mistakes. So a confident team, to make sure that it's a good quality one, you need to understand the culture. And that's all of the cultures within the UK. It's the Black cultures, it's the hearing deaf cultures, and making sure that we develop those skills as much as possible, that we look after the members of our team. I mean, sometimes I think that if we get mentoring from people, it's quite rare. So that people have this enthusiasm, but who do they go to get mentored? Who do they go to get built up? How do we build our teams up? We don't want to sweep these things under the carpet. We want to be part of the same team, and we want to work together. And that is so important. And it's so important that we are taking on all of this from everybody and taking on different people's perspectives.
Yes. We need more deaf leaders out there. We need people leading the way, these trailblazers. This is what we need in the UK. And this is why we're holding this webinar today. So together, through discussion, through sharing experiences and ideas, it kind of starts these balls rolling, and we start to campaign for change. And this is why it's so fantastic and so important. And it demonstrates the examples and the experiences. And so audiences can relate to this. One last question for you, Paul, before you leave us today. You keep saying visionary, and that's a wonderful word. So in 5-10 years, where do you think your leader will go? Sorry.
What? Sorry?
So deaf leadership and management in 5 to 10 years, what do you see the future as?
Right.
So what's your vision, Paul? Come on, tell the audience what it is.
It's a very important question. As a speaker, I'm hoping that you will have been taken on board my information, and I'm hoping that you will have learned from me. I'm hoping that you will have understood what needs to be done to encourage the community. My dream, my vision for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, however long, it's like my tree analogy. I think those shoots are already there, but I want to see it grow. I don't want people to be saying they can't lead anymore. Oh, I'm going to hand it over to someone else, or maybe I'll ask Paul because he's really good at it. You can lead. You can develop those skills. You can understand what your weaknesses are, and you can sort them out. It doesn't matter if you're Black, if you're Asian, if you're gay or lesbian, it does not matter. You have that power. We are handing it on to you. We are handing that influence and that ability onto you to grow and develop this leadership setting. And that is my vision, and I think it's really important for you to hear it. And I really encourage all of you, members of the deaf community, I encourage everyone to believe that you can deliver strong leadership. I hope that also the BSL Act will have been passed, and I think that will be a fantastic example of supporting and campaigning, but we need to support the next generation. But my tree metaphor stands. We are those trees, we have those shoots, we have those roots that we are growing. And we need to ask each other for support, we need to build those relationships. And I've been so happy to be your speaker today. And thank you so much, Craig. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you to everybody who has invited me. I very much appreciate the time that you have given me.
Wow, incredible, inspiring, just amazing. I'm lost for words, literally. I just can't think of many to just match what this has meant to us today, Paul. You're an incredibly powerful speaker and you are a true force of change. Oh, we salute you, Paul. Wonderful. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Paul for his presentation today. It fits into this theory, the ethos of ours and Deaf Leadership Summit and the webinar that we're holding today. They're designed to inspire and engage and enable people to have a more positive aspect. And I believe Paul has helped people achieve that goal today. I've learned so much from you today, Paul. Your presentation was incredible, truly marvelous. So thank you for everybody, for all your questions, for you engaging with the webinar today. I appreciate there's so many things and there were so many questions that you all gave as well. So thank you. If I didn't ask your question, I tried to fit them all in, but I really appreciate everyone's engagement today. So obviously now, if Paul has finished his speech for today, we'll show you the video.